59% of business-to-business companies attribute direct lead generation to LinkedIn. Wow, who knew? Hi, my name is Roberta Perry. I'm president of Roberta Perry and Associates, and I'm also co-founder of Invitation to Tomorrow Today. What we do is we bring showcases to you monthly that give you product and services that answer today's problems and challenges. Last year, Corey Pativan with T2 Marketing International came to our showcase and he talked about how to find a job on LinkedIn. By popular demand, Corey is now back to us, giving us his secrets to how do you find and build your business using LinkedIn. Corey is not only a principal with T2 Marketing International, he's the author of one of the best-selling Marketing to Millennials for Dummies books. Sit back, take lots of notes, I know I did. Enjoy Corey Pativan with secrets to building your business on LinkedIn.
Welcome to yet another episode of the fabulous Invitation to Tomorrow Today, where we are revealing new technologies, new tricks, new methodologies for making your business life, your personal life, all kinds of things better, more productive, and, well, just a little happier, if I can be so bold as to say that. Your host, my co-host, is someone I have admired longer than I have really known her. She is the mistress or the master of the business development universe, and her company, of which she is the principal, is Roberta Perry and Associates. If she can't sell it, there's nobody in the world that will buy it. I'm just saying. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Roberta, who will introduce our speaker and get this show on the road. And anybody who shows up, we're not there. They don't get to put their 2 cents in. So we'll just have to look at their name.
All right. Thank you, Norma Lynn. Woo! Thank you, Norma Lynn. Great. And it's so good to see everybody on the showcase today. Appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. As Norma Lynn mentioned, we are in a collaboration of 4 amazing women. I believe we are amazing. So it's Norma Lynn Cutler with Cutler Enterprises, Heidi Hirsch with Reveal Architects, plus our advisor who keeps us totally on the straight and narrow road when it comes to technology, Susie Oglahara with Panasonic Hollywood Labs. We are thrilled to bring you today part 2 about LinkedIn. If those of you that were with us in September, you probably witnessed Corey Pativan, and Corey talked to us about how do we find a job on LinkedIn. Well, what happened after that particular presentation, we had several of our audience members go, well, finding a job is one thing, but what do we do about finding new business? Are there any tips that we should be aware of in finding new business on LinkedIn? We thought that would be a great topic to bring Corey back. And those of you who don't know Corey is a principal partner with T2 Marketing International. I met Corey, it's got to be now 1.5 years ago, over in Vegas.
Probably.
Yeah.
Although by 1.5 years, might as well be 100 years at this point.
Might as well have been years ago. It's where Holly and I have breakfast all the time when we're at the Global Gaming Conference, G2E. So Corey and I were there, we met, I went, wow, Corey's going to be a part of my universe for life, just like Holly is. I can't wait till we can actually get back to Vegas. Norma Lynn came out of Vegas this weekend, so she could share with you later about what happened in Las Vegas with Meow Wolf. Anyway,
I thought that was against the rules.
Yeah. Back to Corey. Corey, when I met Corey, I said, well, asked him what he did. He told us it's the marketing company. And then he happened to mention that he wrote a book. And for those of you who can see the book, it is Market to the Millennial Mindset, or Marketing to Millennials for Dummies. I immediately got a copy of it, and it has been an interesting read over the last year, Corey. And I know he's coming out with his second book. But we brought Corey back because he is a master in talking about LinkedIn and how to best use LinkedIn and he's going to share his secrets with us today. But before I turn it over to Corey, let me give you 3 statistics that I found interesting when it came to LinkedIn. 65% of business-to-business companies have acquired a customer on LinkedIn. 38% of business-to-business companies can attribute direct revenue from LinkedIn, and 59% of B2B companies attribute direct lead generation from LinkedIn. So how do we find new business using LinkedIn? Let's welcome our speaker today, Corey Pativan, with secrets to building your business on LinkedIn. And when Corey is done, after his 15 minutes, we will then have a Q&A session. Please put your questions in the chat, and I'll get to those as we blend the questions we have with the questions you have. All right, Corey, take it away.
All right, well, thank you very much, Roberta. Thank you, obviously, everybody with ITTT, and especially everybody for joining in today. I really appreciate it. I know that we've spent more than enough time on Zoom, so the fact that you opted into joining in yet another one is hugely appreciated on my end. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Corey Pativan. As Roberta mentioned, I'm a partner at T2 Marketing International. Roberta and I, as she mentioned, have been working on 1,000 different projects at the same time, which I feel is exactly in Roberta's wheelhouse to be doing at all times. And this sort of idea of focusing in on LinkedIn came largely out of demand. This has been a particularly different time, to say the least, for everyone. And you look at networks like LinkedIn, you look at networks that focus in on professional development, and they have just been exploding in terms of engagement, in terms of their value. And so it seemed like a pretty natural approach to focus in on how to find a job, considering what the impact that COVID had on the market. Naturally, for a lot of people, that meant taking off on your own, focusing in on developing your own brand, your own approach to consulting, which led to this part 2, which is the secrets to building your business on LinkedIn. And I'll preface today's presentation, which we'll jump into in a second here, by saying that for as much as I'd like to give you one magical secret that will just explode your revenue and drive up thousands and thousands of new customers, it takes work. So the focus today is not so much on the secret sauce of finding direct customers, but the secrets to actually building your expertise, identifying the opportunities, and how best to leverage those opportunities when it comes to LinkedIn. With that, now that I gave my disclaimer, I feel as though we can go ahead and dive in. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. Always have to do the tech check. So, as I mentioned, today we're looking at a couple of secrets to building your business on LinkedIn. First, not so much the secret, but really the overarching method, or the overarching theme that I want everybody to keep in mind here is that we're going to be looking at content over company page. The reason being is that there are a lot of great features when it comes to company pages, don't get me wrong, but the real secret sauce, if you want to call it that, is how you use your content in order to both showcase yourself as an expert and identify and prospect leads that you find on LinkedIn. So that first secret, how do you start optimizing your content? There is more than enough information being shared on networks like LinkedIn, on any professional network that you're using. There's more than enough content to keep you busy for a couple of 100 years if you really dive into it. So what is it that you can start to do to optimize your content? To do that, we're going to take a look at just a couple of simple do's and don'ts. The first, and I think one of the more important ones, is the reminder to actually be social, to actually ask questions, to engage with people, to reach out to your network, to participate in the conversation. You also want to respond to questions that are being asked. You want to respond to articles that are being shared. You don't simply want to take something that you found, share it out there, and then just let it lie. If you want these things to work, you really have to take some time, devote yourself to engaging with the audience, and be as authentic as you possibly can be. The idea that you have to, and keeping in mind that it's a professional network, of course, The idea that you have to simply share a piece of content and leave it out there without giving some commentary is one big misstep that people take, because it doesn't allow you to show who you are. It doesn't allow you to engage a little bit more frequently with people by showcasing your personality, being authentic to yourself, letting that personality shine through, and actually participating in the conversation, as opposed to just holding up a megaphone while everyone else is also holding a megaphone to the same thread of conversation. The second thing that you'll want to do with your content, you'll want to participate in groups. You want to participate in the capabilities that LinkedIn offers when it comes to creating long form content. You'll want to participate, frankly, in the topic discussions, the hashtag explosion and the short form video explosion, the story explosion that we've seen on every network from Instagram to LinkedIn, is something that, for as much as it may be repetitive to see these little bubbles on every app that you're opening, the fact is that these are in demand. They are highly in use by people who are actually engaging on the networks, and engaging with content is a way to highlight your expertise. You don't necessarily need to say, I am an expert. You can actually show people you're an expert by writing this long form content, whether it's a blog, whether it's a long form post. Obviously, the idea is to use the pieces of content at your disposal in their optimal capacity, which would mean keeping your post short and using some of the long form content capabilities on LinkedIn to actually write out something that you are passionate about, something that a field that you may be an expert in based on your experience, and actually sharing that content to groups. All of these are really valuable mechanisms for showcasing your expertise and really starting to identify yourself as being a notch above the rest when it comes to a particular skill or a particular industry. Now, what don't you want to do? Obviously, so sometimes your don'ts are just as, if not more important than your do's. The idea that LinkedIn is a business network, you want to keep yourself professional, but just because it's a business network doesn't mean you should be sitting there selling yourself at every turn. I know that sounds counterintuitive to building your business. Obviously, the idea really is, to sell yourself, to sell your expertise, to sell your business and identify prospects. But if you focus all of your efforts on simply shouting into a crowd, I mentioned the megaphone example, I'll use it again. If every single person on LinkedIn is shouting into a megaphone, into this empty void that has no engagement, that has no conversation, then essentially it's the age-old question of a tree falling in the forest. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, if 1,000 people are yelling about themselves and no one's there to listen, does it make a difference to your sales? The answer, by the way, is no. There's no metaphor there. That's just a no. You also want to make, in highlighting your expertise and showcasing your value, you don't want to be afraid to take a bold stance on a business relevant topic. Now, I stress business relevant topic because this isn't a doom scrolling Twitter or the pit of despair of pontification that we find in sometimes our personal feeds on Facebook. This is LinkedIn. We do want to keep it business relevant, but if there is something that you believe firmly, if there is something that you have an interesting take on, don't be afraid to stick to your conviction and write possibly a long form piece of content. While you may have a controversial opinion about a business's choice to do A or B, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something you should be vocalizing. It does have the potential to really showcase that you are an individual thinker. It does have the potential to showcase that you do have unique viewpoints, unique takes, and that you really firmly stand by it, which frankly is a sought after quality when it comes to people hiring an agency, hiring a consultant. If they have convictions, they stick by them, and they give thoughtful rundowns as to why they have that particular stance, it could only serve you well. Secret number 2. Where should you be looking for your leads? Now, obviously, leads are wherever you can find them, but I want to start looking at some of the unique ways we can think about what LinkedIn has to offer in order to start identifying leads. So I think the most obvious one that we can pull from is your actual network. LinkedIn is a professional network. People have anywhere from a few dozen to several thousand connections, and those connections are sharing stories, they're sharing information, they're sharing company updates. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people talk about job openings and work that they're looking to fill just in the news feed alone. So it's possible to actually find information from your network itself. Now you can start to sift through that network by looking at some of the filters available. You can start to look through your network based on the companies people are working for, seeing if those companies are a right fit for what it is you're offering, but really take advantage of the network as opposed to just connecting with people and then letting the network lie. Actually bring it to life and start prospecting from one of your closest personal assets. Next, we have groups. Groups is an excellent way to start showcasing your expertise and looking for business by sharing content. The thing that people often forget is that sharing the content is part one, participating in the discussion is part two. I think you may be surprised to find so much value in the actual conversations that are taking place. If you're not a frequent user of groups, if you haven't joined, which is still, there are some people out there who still haven't joined groups, take some time, look through the groups that are available in your industry, look through the groups that are available in tangential industries where you think your expertise may be applicable, and start to look through the conversation. People use groups to share, again, company updates, personal updates. I've seen things as overt as someone asking if they can make recommendations for someone to do work. So take advantage of group discussions. The group discussions are a little bit more intimate than what you might find blasted out on a news feed. And you may be well able to find a few prospects or prospective companies that could use your expertise that may be worth reaching out to. This is one that I think is largely overlooked, especially by consultants, and that's job posts. Generally, when we think of a job post, you think that a job post is a place where people are looking to hire a person to come into their company and work exclusively for them. One thing that is often overlooked is that companies are very happy to hire outside consultants. They're very happy to hire agencies simply because it's a flat fee. You don't have the benefits, you don't have packages, you don't have insurance, you don't have really any expenses to worry about, and the job still gets done, sometimes at a fraction of the cost of hiring an employee. That is not necessarily shown in the job descriptions that are being posted. Now, granted, if somebody is posting a position for VP of business development, it may be a little tougher to convince them that you want them to hire a consultant for business development, but that doesn't mean that jobs even as high as the VP level may not still be considering looking at an outside firm or outside consultant to take on the responsibilities. There are benefits to doing it, and frankly, there is no harm in reaching out, asking if it's an opportunity that could look for an outside consultant, and start to engage in the hiring process without actually applying for the job in the traditional sense. And I think the simplest, the one right at our disposal is your feed. I mentioned that your network, you have people in your network who you may be looking to reach out to. Well, the same thing goes with the content that those people are sharing to your feed. The benefit of your feed is that it may not just be your first connections where you can reach out to them directly. You may have second and third degree connections that are popping up in your news feed with information because someone within your first degree of connections is engaging with that piece of content. I've seen people who are third degree connections in my news feed where they're saying looking to hire, if you know anybody interested in blank, have them get in touch. It's a third degree connection, but it was shared by someone in my first degree. So it's always a good idea to sift through there, look at what people are saying, because people do, again, take the time to share information about their hiring needs, which may be beneficial if you're looking for consulting or if you're looking to find potential prospects, either in the short term or the long term. And secret number three, the big fun secret of how do you actually get in the door. I was on a call with somebody the other day who mentioned to me or who asked me if I was doing any speaking, and I actually mentioned this event. I said, I'm talking about finding business on LinkedIn. And her first question to me was, is that even possible? Now, that may not sound all that encouraging, but the reason why it's not necessarily an encouraging sounding statement is because it's not so simple as to say, can you hire me? Sure. There are steps involved, there is a process involved, and while LinkedIn is a part of that process, it's really the first part of a process that you really need to devote yourself to. The key is committing yourself to doing it right and following some of these steps in order to make sure that you can really get the value and extract the potential that comes from LinkedIn's prospecting and business development potential. So, what are the secrets to starting the conversation? First thing is do your research. If you're doing any sort of outreach on LinkedIn, if you're connecting with someone in the hopes that you may be hired, the worst thing you could do is send out a pretty standard boilerplate message that doesn't say anything specific about the company that you're trying to reach out to. I can't tell you how many times I've received in mail from people who are simply sending out, hi, Corey, and it might as well be any name that you could possibly have in there that they just swap out. Hi, blank. I thought you might be interested in XYZ. Click here to download our recent ebook and let me know if you'd like to speak. The value that you can pull from that is going to be minimal compared to even something remotely tailored to me. Hi, Corey, I noticed that your company page doesn't have blank. Well, we specialize in, or I noticed that your website hasn't yet started using blank. Well, we specialize in this, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Just the small note that research was done, that they actually tailored the message to my needs, piques my interest significantly more. And that goes for anyone that you'll be prospecting with, because there's more than enough out there of people trying to solicit business. If it's standard boilerplate with no degree of personality, no degree of individuality to my needs, it simply is going to fall on deaf ears. Next, you'll want to connect on a personal level. I actually did this just the other day. I reached out to someone who I knew in my network, and I knew that he's from Kansas City. And obviously, what was my opening line? Well, it had to do with the Super Bowl. So the idea the idea is more about how miserable of a game it was, but that was just my own opinion. But if you tailor the message personally, again, there's something to the personal aspect. I know LinkedIn is a professional network. There's no question that you want to keep conversations related to professional matters. That's what LinkedIn is built for. But by personalizing, the same way you'll want to do research on the prospect company, you'll want to connect in a capacity that's a bit more personal, just to open up the door and get ideally increase the likelihood that you'll get some recognition and possibly even a response. That goes again with number 3. Do not start cold on the pitch. Opening with some research saying, I noticed your company. Also, I happen to be a fan of X. I saw your profile picture. I was wondering if you may be interested in having a conversation. If you just jump right into a 4-paragraph pitch, I guarantee you that by paragraph 2, your in-mail, your message, whatever it is you're trying to do is going to be largely ignored. Much like a cold email, if you send one out and you have 16 paragraphs detailing the history of your company, why you're so much better, and you go into all that detail, well, frankly, you missed the opportunity to pitch once you know you actually have their ear. In that first cold outreach, that first point of contact, you don't know if they're going to look at it. You don't know if they're going to have any interest. So you may be sending all of this information to someone who's never going to respond to you. Save the pitch for that second point of contact where you actually have an opportunity to give a quick rundown of why you're reaching out from a professional standpoint, and then start the conversation on a second initiative after you've connected with them using some of that personal connection, personal anecdotes or personal elements. You'll also want to have one area of focus. This relates largely to the research aspect. When you're giving that pitch, there is so much out there related to so many different areas. One of the things, and I'll actually use an example from one of the attendees on today's call. Walter, one of the things I love, Walter, about the way you pitch, you mention yourself, talk a bit about yourself at the beginning of these sessions is the second one I've been on with you, the second networking connection, or ITTT I've been on with you. And the reason why I find it so interesting is because you talk specifically about mobile geo-targeted capabilities. Obviously, I'm sure there's plenty more that you guys are capable of doing, but the fact that you really zone in on one specific area is something of value. And then from there, the conversation can expand as you continue to talk. But if you focus in on one specific area, if you're able to tailor through the research you've done to one specific aspect, then the conversation can flow into other naturally occurring areas when it comes to what your pitch is. And lastly, you'll want to try and find a way after you've had those first 2 or 3 talking points to move the conversation outside of LinkedIn. When you're on LinkedIn, you're still confined to let's call them the laws of LinkedIn physics. So you're still confined to what you can and can't do, how you can and can't reach out. And there's still this barrier, even if it's in LinkedIn messaging, that isn't necessarily going to be getting through to someone in the places where they're checking most. So the third aspect to really continue the conversation and start to move towards that pitch and that close is going to be, I'd love to have a conversation. Do you have, can I send you an email with a bit more information and we can schedule a call? We set up a call later this week? Here's my email. You could let me know what times might work for you. Setting something up to move off of LinkedIn really cements that this has become a prospect. Whether it's warm or cold is up to you and how you feel conversations are going. But moving that conversation from this door opening capability on LinkedIn into your pipeline is really how you'll want to close out the LinkedIn component of developing business and bring them into whatever pipeline you're using, whether that's a CRM, whether that's connecting with them over email and maintaining communications that way before you start to put them into whatever project management software you're using. LinkedIn is that first step to a much broader approach, but it's a very valuable step so long as you're maintaining some sort of structure into how you're doing it. With that, I think we're doing all right. We ran over a little bit on time there, but don't want anybody to miss anything. So with that, first of all, before we jump into questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer questions. This information is publicly available. So I'll leave with that and I'll pass it back to Roberta for some questions.
Wow, thank you, Corey. Woo.
Thank you.
Well done. I was taking notes. Even though I've heard your presentation before. It reminded
That's always
me
good.
I was taking more notes. Just to start with the questions, and if anybody has questions, put that in the chat. I would appreciate it. But the first one, Corey, just to make sure everybody understands, and I'm sure they do, but let's clarify, what does CRM mean?
Oh, sure. That's a customer relationship management. So if you have there are a lot of them that are out there. There are some that are simpler. I mean, I think the one that everybody would know best is probably Salesforce. Okay. That said, Salesforce, I've worked with a lot of different ones, and they all have a lot of really, really valuable capabilities. So the key is to really do some research, figure out what it is you're using it for. If you're using a service, I've found that Salesforce is really great if you're selling a software. I've found it's a little less, and understandably, it's a little less tailored for service providers. I've found Pipedrive. We use Pipedrive. I found Pipedrive is really great for service providers. So if that's definitely one to look at. But if you're comfortable with Salesforce or Close, just do the research is the key to go with CRMs.
Let's make sure I understand what you just said. You said Pipedrive?
Pipedrive, yeah, Pipedrive. That's the one we use, and we actually moved there from Salesforce simply because we found that it was more conducive for service providers.
Good,
for
thank
us,
you.
that was personally.
All right, thank you. Tim, would you please put up Corey's information into the chat box for everybody?
Yeah, I can actually
and we'll get that
back
done.
Up on the screen here.
And we'll get that done for you, Ivan. Thank you so much. First, I'm going to ask the question. Walter had a good question. I'll go to Walter's question first. How do you navigate the problem of no longer being able to form groups within your contacts?
It's which that's a great question, and I think the key really is at first, obviously, that was something that was I was bothered by because that's really where there was a ton of value to be extracted. Then I came to realize that the problem or the reason why they did it was largely because so many people were focused in on creating groups and trying to leverage those groups
Yeah.
for business development that ultimately it ended up being no different than people all trying to get basically the way I always describe it is it's a lot easier to join into a conversation that's already happening than to try and start one yourself. So while starting a group may not necessarily be capable as the same way it was, jumping really sifting through the groups that are available, really taking the time to research. There's still millions of groups that are out there.
Okay.
So taking the time to sift through is still as valuable as being able to start your own related to a specific topic.
Okay, good. Thanks, Corey. Ivan, I'm going to get to your question now, but I want to ask a preliminary question, and then we'll get to the question that you have about connections. So,
Sure.
Corey, what does, and again, most of people probably already know this, but it's good to review. What does the first, second, and third connection mean to business development? And if I've got 7,000 or 8,000 connections, are they all my first contact or first, or are they my second and third? So can you clarify some of that for us?
Yeah. So if you have 5, 6, 7,000 connections, then those are all first connections, people you've connected with who have connected back with you. Those are all your first. When you see a second or third degree connection, generally speaking, it's degrees removed from your own network. A first is someone that you've connected with personally. A second is somebody that you are connected with through your network, and a third is somebody that you're connected with through some sort of disconnected connection. So basically someone that you're connected with through a group, but not necessarily connected with through your network. Someone that is not connected, that if a second degree connection commented on someone's post, you may see that person as a third degree connection. It's a degree removed from your internal network. So you have your connections, and then your network connections, which is basically people you're not connected with and don't necessarily have a direct point of introduction.
Okay.
So those would be pretty much, you'd need introductions from someone.
Got it. All right. So now I'm going to go on to Ivan's question. Any suggestion if you don't get a response from a number one connection?
That's a good question, because the same way you don't want to be reaching out cold with you don't want to send out 5, 6 emails. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the same email from a call tracking. I won't name names, but there is a call tracking software that has sent me a dozen emails in the last 2 weeks. Safe to say I won't be using them for any call tracking needs, but a dozen emails in 2 weeks. It operates in a similar manner to LinkedIn. You don't want to send 5, 6 messages in a row. What you do want to potentially look at is finding a second entry door. So if you sent someone a message and they didn't respond, that's unfortunate. A second opportunity to reach out might be to see something they may have shared in their feed and comment on it, or possibly start the conversation up again by saying something along the lines of, just wanted to let you know I saw your post and thought your article was great. Curious to know if you got my last message and if you'd like to set up a time to talk. The idea is, again, to tailor it with a personal effort, tailor it in a way that actually shows that this is a conversation and not just a sales pitch.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you, Corey. This one's from Susie. Does the most recent recommendation matter over the old ones?
No. No, because really recommendations they're great. They're profile specific, so they're really historical record more than they are immediate value. Immediate value would be engaging with someone in a recent post, and you think about it from a different context. how many pieces of content have you liked or engaged with on a network like Facebook? Of those pieces of content, how many people, how many profiles have you clicked on and started to go through? It's really, LinkedIn has made a real concerted effort to become more conversational and to become more about the feed than the profile. For a long time, it was a glorified resume holder.
Right.
They've really made efforts to make it conversational. So the recommendation side of things, they're still valuable, but they don't lose value over time because, like I said, they're a point of historical record, not live actionable content.
Great. The next question is, you were talking about a pitch, or how to pitch or how not to pitch. What is the text limit for personalized invitations? LinkedIn originally said 300 characters. Is that
Yeah.
true for the first pitch?
Yeah, when you're sending out a personalized connection, yes, it's 300. What I recommend I would recommend keeping it more to connecting with someone with a short, hi, I saw your post and I thought it was excellent, or just something quick, something to the point. Not connecting with someone with that long-winded pitch, because you don't know if it'll fall on deaf ears. You don't know if someone may. I mean, there have been times when I've accepted a connection on my phone. And unlike a desktop, when I accept a connection on my phone, I'm not immediately brought to the messages that I'm shown. When I accept on a desktop and I get an introductory message, it pops up right away. If I accept a connection on my phone, that's sort of left in my unread messages, which I then have to go to separately. So I would keep it short, sweet, and save that for a first connection via message or in a post.
I know Steve Jobs always said, if you can't say it in 240 characters, you don't have your message down. So
Yeah. So
appreciate having a few more characters, like 300. All right, Corey, when you talk about long form, what does that
yeah,
mean?
long form would relate to something like, well, long form would be the blogging or the direct long form content. So sort of LinkedIn has really pushed their native content capabilities in the last few years. Native being directly within the app and not separate from off-site links. So one of the ways that they've done that is they've provided everyone. Originally, it was just for journalists and media partners. A few years ago, LinkedIn opened up their capabilities to create long-form content. So content like a blog post, video content and commentary that are housed within your profile and shared to your feed. That operates similar. The idea with that is that it's similar to creating a video on, let's say, Instagram or on Facebook compared to sharing a link to YouTube. That way, you can have content that automatically is optimized for LinkedIn, that has all of it housed. It still has SEO qualities to it, so there's no need to worry about not having the SEO qualities that you may get on a blog. But it does have also a higher likelihood of being featured in the newsfeed algorithm, because they want to promote long form content that is housed on LinkedIn. So if you're thinking of writing a long, detailed piece of content that features images like you would with a blog post, writing that on LinkedIn would be what I would consider long form content.
Corey, is that what LinkedIn calls LinkedIn Pulse?
Yes, yes and no. LinkedIn Pulse has expanded. It's really become more the media aspect of LinkedIn. So it's newswire, it's PR, media releases,
Okay.
but it's sort of become their content hub. So it's no longer exclusive to media. It's really their LinkedIn native content that they're trying to push.
Okay. We have, thanks, Corey. We had a question come in about how much posting is too much posting.
That's actually a very good question, because I've seen there are people who mistake LinkedIn for Facebook. There are people who mistake LinkedIn for Twitter. There are people who are sharing 8, 9, 10 posts a day that are totally unrelated. I've seen it, and when it comes to LinkedIn, sharing. There are some things to share, but sharing just 6 or 7 funny videos that you saw in a row, it's not the right place for it. That's not to say that there isn't an opportunity to share 6 or 7 pieces of content, especially if it's news, especially if it's updates. So it's really a question of, if it's the right content, there is no too much. But if it's just sharing for the sake of trying to get into news feeds, then there is definitely a too much. And you should be, if you're using LinkedIn correctly, and if you're seeing people who are using it correctly, it should be obvious where that line is.
Okay. If you're trying to build your business, I had a question that came in. Do we use the consistency? So if I post at 8 a.m. every Wednesday morning, something about the business, remember when, etc., do people understand that consistency, or does it even matter on LinkedIn?
No, the consistency that I would refer to refers more to the brand voice that you're developing, more to the than the content you're creating. If you have consistency in the time that you're sharing, let's say a newsletter, that's one thing. But sharing something at 8 a.m. on an algorithm-based platform, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter, wherever it is, the time stamp is not necessarily the consistency. It's the consistency of content, the consistency of outreach, the consistency of your voice, of your structure. So it's really more about having a consistency in who you've created for yourself and your company on LinkedIn, rather than what time it's shared.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for answering that question. Let's go up to, because we got the question in, should we be signed up for LinkedIn Premium if we're in business development?
There are arguments to be made on both sides. I actually talked about this in the last session for those who were there. For those who weren't there, I'll just reiterate what I mentioned, which is, if it's a question of looking for, the last session we talked about looking for a job, and I could say that if you're looking for a job, you're prospecting to find a position, LinkedIn Premium is not necessarily going to be all that much more valuable than just LinkedIn as it is. In this case, however, if you're looking for prospects, the premium, I've worked with it and I've worked without it, and there are certainly benefits if you're serious about your prospecting, and that's the key. If you're serious about your prospecting, if you're serious about using LinkedIn as a primary tool for prospecting and lead development, then there's no harm in spending the $30, $60, $100 that it may cost to use it. Then I know that there's also the Sales Navigator aspect of LinkedIn, which if you're selling services, Sales Navigator may not necessarily be the best thing for you, because sales services are more relationship and unique. But if you're selling product, if you're selling SaaS, then the Sales Navigator, especially if you're selling anything industrial, the Sales Navigator may definitely be a worthwhile prospecting tool to invest in.
Again, let's just make sure everybody understands what SaaS is, Corey.
Software as a service.
Okay, got it. All right. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing those. Tim, I'm not seeing any additional ones that we haven't answered in there. I got it. Perfect. So Corey, final thoughts about the secrets of building your business on LinkedIn.
I would take it a step back outside of LinkedIn and just look at final thoughts of building business. LinkedIn, like any other tool or any other platform that you're going to use, is only going to work for you if you work for it. So thinking that there's a one magic wand secret is going to leave you pretty disappointed. So the key is, to your point before, Roberta, is that consistency. It's the dedication to doing it properly, and it's really taking the time and understanding what needs to be invested just from a personal time and personal effort standpoint, and you'll be able to make it work. You just have to be willing to put in what's necessary.
We got to work at this? I thought business development just kind of came rolling.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just easy stuff.
Oh, yeah, right. Business development's easy. That's what I tell everybody. No problem. You got it. Corey, thanks again so much for
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And again, thank you to our audience. And with that, back to you, Norma Lynn.
Well, thank you for joining us. And for those of you who came in a little bit late, the reason we started at 12:45 is to give everybody a voice to the network, really, to say who you are and what you do. And you never know the person who needs you the most might be watching, so you want to get in at 12:45 instead of at 1. Our next showcase is on St. Patrick's Day, so we expect everybody to have a full bottle of scotch right next to them. It could be
Corey is smiling.
Well, I've got my office bar right behind me, so that's fine.
But our next guest presenter is a gentleman by the name of Lance Miller, who Roberta's known for years and years, who's in the Toastmaster world, and he's going to talk about your 30-second elevator pitch, how to craft it, how to make it more meaningful. He's the guy who's been teaching people for 15 years how to say it right, not like me, and stick your foot in your mouth as soon as you can.
Yeah.
This will, for those of us who tend to go on and on, this will teach us to focus, distill our message, and really come up with something that zaps, like a sledgehammer.
Normalyn, if I might just jump in for a moment, because people may not know what Toastmasters is, but Toastmasters International is a worldwide organization, 143 countries, over 18,000 clubs. Lance Miller, our guest speaker, in 2005 beat out 30,000 people to become the world champion of public speaking. And before COVID, he traveled the world from Saudi Arabia to China to India, all over the United States, teaching not only Toastmasters, but companies how to find their voices and also to instruct them on this 30-second elevators pitch. So when Lance said he was available, I jumped on it. So to bring him to all of our showcase audience, because he'll get that down for us in about 15 minutes. And again, as Norma Lynn said, he won't do it with a hammer and a sledge. He's very nice. Back to you, Norma Lynn.
He's a gentleman. So I will thank you all for attending. And again, if you want a copy of this actually sent to you by tonight or tomorrow, please make sure to let us know. You can still fit into the chat or text whoever or email whoever invited you to this showcase, and we will be sure to get it to you so you can use it for reference. But thank you again for those repeat offenders who've shown up today. We're really gratified to see you more than once here. All right. Have a good week.
Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.